¿Cuál fue la reacción de Genaro García Luna al escuchar su condena de poco más de 38 años? Pero no solo eso, escuchar las fuertes palabras, yo diría devastadoras palabras del juez Brian Cogan, cuando le dijo que básicamente no le creía nada, que él tiene una doble vida y hasta lo comparó con el Chapo Guzmán. ¿Cómo fue esa reacción de él?
You saw how he reacted. That's pretty much all I got. And so the reason I can tell you, I can't say I spoke to Genaro since yesterday, and the reason I haven't spoken to him is because the sentencing was so late in the afternoon that at that moment they did not give me an opportunity to speak with him afterwards. Of course, spoke with his family. I spoke to him briefly in the courtroom. Interestingly, he didn't actually hear what his sentence was. So you may have seen in the courtroom that he was talking to me and asking me a couple questions. And the questions he was asking me was, what was the sentence? Because the judge, he kind of mumbled it. He said it, and he said it in months. And in our system, federal system, it's in months, so you have to do the math pretty quickly. And you did 38 years, that's fine. But he had to sort of do that math, and he didn't hear the number. And we're not able to interrupt the judge and just sort of speak. So I talked to him a little bit about that. I can say that I already know what his reaction is going to be. We talked about it at length. So going into this sentencing, what's important for, I think, your viewers to understand is that the government wanted a life sentence here. The sentencing guidelines recommend a life sentence. And why do they recommend a life sentence? They recommend a life sentence because of the quantity of narcotics that El Chapo and other people imported into the United States. That's essentially what drives it. But Genaro was realistic. He knew what was going on. He knew that a jury had concluded that he was guilty and that the fight will continue on appeal. And so his reaction was that this was a necessary step. He knew that we needed to get the sentencing done because we cannot appeal before the sentence is over. So was he prepared for a life sentence? Sure. This is not a life sentence. So to be clear, the government wanted a life sentence. They wanted to make sure there is no chance that he gets out of jail. He will not serve 38 years.
Sí, esa es una de las cosas que me estabas explicando, que la sentencia es de 38 años, pero que él va a cumplir mucho menos que eso. ¿Por qué?
Well, it's not much less, but it is less. So in general, 85% is what you serve of your sentence. Now that assumes that someone is going to be not necessarily a model inmate, but you will get what's called good time credit, and that's what represents that 15%. So if you do that math, it's 460 months is his sentence. I think that takes it down to around 390 months. Now then you subtract what he has already served, which is 60 months. And so
¿Cuántos años?
More or less he has, I mean, he's obviously served 5 years already, but more or less he has about 27 more to go. That is without earning any other credits to reduce his sentence, and that is also without him being released earlier in a removal proceeding or something like that. So, I mean, those are small numbers in terms of like additional credits maybe off, but maybe 25, 27 more years. Now, what does that mean for him, a 56-year-old? Well, you're right, it could be a life sentence. We have to hope he's going to live past 80, and so he could be getting out in his 80s or early, maybe around 80.
Y una de las cosas que se ha mencionado, y hasta el expresidente de México, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, dijo en una de sus conferencias matutinas, es que si García Luna dice que es inocente, ¿por qué su defensa pide 20 años de condena? Si es inocente, ¿por qué pide clemencia? ¿Es eso una admisión de culpabilidad?
I think people who make that argument, that say us asking for 20 years was some sort of admission of guilt, it represents a couple different things. One, either those people don't understand our system, which I actually don't believe. I think people understand that when you are convicted after trial, and the court has to sentence you to 10 years, 20 years, whatever that number is, of course your lawyer is going to ask for the least amount of time. Because if I didn't ask for the least amount of time, and we decided to say we are innocent, therefore we don't respect or acknowledge that this court has jurisdiction to sentence us, well, then we would guarantee ourselves a life sentence. And that would be foolish. And I say that people understand that. I think people are using that like they do in today's society as an argument to try to just say, oh, look, he now admits it. The reality is a sentencing after a trial is to say, assuming a jury has found him guilty, we accept that. But right now the jury has decided that, and the judge is forced to sentence him.
Algo que destacó la Fiscalía durante la audiencia es que García Luna nunca ha tomado responsabilidad o ha expresado remordimiento por los delitos por los que fue hallado culpable, pero no siente García Luna alguna responsabilidad por la violencia la horrible violencia que se vivió en México durante su mandato, durante el sexenio de Felipe Calderón. Y él era el jefe de seguridad. ¿Él piensa que hizo un buen trabajo o siente ese tipo de remordimiento y le debe decir algo, una disculpa o algo al pueblo de México?
That's a tough question. So it's a little bit outside of what my job is, right? My job is to represent an individual charged with particular crimes. Let me address the first part. The first part of he didn't accept responsibility. You heard that in the courtroom the other day. So in the prosecutor's playbook, that's what they say at every sentencing after a trial. Because the defendant is in a tough position because they, of course, are professing their innocence. They're not going to say, I'm sorry for the crimes that I did not commit. On the second point, it's a little different. That's not what we were talking about in the courtroom. They were talking a little bit in the courtroom about the war on drugs and under his watch, all these things happened and all these other things happened. Well, now we're in the political realm a little bit. What would Genaro say to that? I think you'd have to ask Genaro. What would I say to that? There's plenty of blame to go around. The war on drugs that Mexico was involved in during 2006 and 2012 and a little bit before, where Genaro was the Secretary of Public Security, it's all been put on him, which is quite interesting. Yes, he was the boss. He was not the president of the country. There was also other cabinet members, including generals, the military, everything else. Last I checked, there was a general that was arrested in this country and returned to Mexico who was charged with similar things. And so, that's a political discussion, whether he would need to apologize for the lives lost and everything else. I can say this, I read in the paper every single day the thousands of lives that are currently being lost in Mexico, and I don't hear any administrations apologizing for that either.
Bueno, en esta carta él escribió a los medios, no la que le envió al juez previo a la sentencia. García Luna lanzó acusaciones en contra del expresidente de México, de Andrés Manuel López Obrador. ¿De qué pruebas habla Genaro García Luna? ¿Él las tiene? ¿Las ha visto? ¿Tú las tienes? ¿Las ha visto? Y si es así, ¿por qué no presentarlas? ¿Por qué no usarlas para ayudarse a sí mismo? Y hasta el propio López Obrador lo retó a que si tiene las pruebas, que las presente.
So, number one, I think that part of his letter has been taken a little bit out of context. I think the words of the letter are pretty clear. What he is referring to is the evidence that's in the public forum already, that people have presented in the public forum. Look, I'm not here defending AMLO, I'm not here accusing AMLO, I'm here to defend Genaro García Luna. And the reality is what he was talking about in that letter was things that are already in the public forum. He's not the first person to have said those words about the former president. And the former president said, I understand from you and others, that he said, yeah, present the evidence, present the evidence. Well, look, the last thing Genaro García Luna wants is what has happened to him to happen to somebody else. Is it true? Is it not true? It happened during trial as well. We asked questions of a particular witness. That witness answered the way that witness wanted to answer. So, the evidence itself, I leave that to the reporters. I leave that to the law enforcement agencies of the United States and whatever else. It's been reported that there's been investigations of the former president. If that's the case, and the United States government wants to bring a case, so be it. You know.
Entonces, cuando él dice registros de oficiales de México y Estados Unidos, eso suena como que son informes de inteligencia, algún documento de alguna autoridad, y no solo el registro público, lo que se ha dicho en los periódicos. Entonces, tú dices que él lo que está diciendo aquí es lo que está ya publicado en la prensa o que se ha dicho, pero no que él tiene algo como un informe de inteligencia o algo del FBI o del Departamento de Justicia o de la Procuraduría de México.
Look, he number one, he doesn't have access he has access to all the information in his case. You know, I have access to all the statements of the witnesses against him, their prior statements, which I think you saw during trial. That's what we use to cross-examine witnesses. Now, I'm under protective order. I can't disclose that. I couldn't sit here today and say, let me tell you what Ray Zambada said on this particular day. I can't do that because I have information. I have the notes of information, but I'm not permitted to do that, and neither is he. But what has been reported, at least I've read, is certain people in the media have sources within the DEA, sources within the FBI, sources in the Mexican government, and they are reporting all of these things. And so I think that is what he's really referring to when he's talking about that.